3 days after their son Jake disappeared into the forest without a trace, a fox started showing up at Hazel and David's window. It tapped on the glass, as if trying to convey a message. Fueled by their urgent desire to find their son, they chose to follow the creature, embarking on a journey that would unveil a revelation beyond their wildest dreams. Could this discovery be the key to finding Jake? 3 days had passed since David and Hazel's son Jake vanished, leaving the small town of Redwood Falls shrouded in silence and suspicion. The police had no leads, and each night, as their despair deepened, a fox with strikingly intense eyes began appearing at their living room window. It tapped softly on the glass, as if trying to convey an urgent message. On the 4th night, David sat on the sofa, captivated by the fox's purposeful movements. "Maybe it's a sign," Hazel whispered beside him, her voice trembling with a mix of hope and fear. They agreed that if the fox returned, they would follow it. The next evening, as the sky blazed with sunset colors, the fox appeared again, its knocks more insistent. Without hesitation, David and Hazel grabbed their coats and a flashlight, stepping into the cool night air, hearts racing with a mix of fear and anticipation. The fox led them through familiar streets before veering into the woods that bordered their town. The underbrush was thick, and thorns snagged at their clothes as they struggled to keep up. Suddenly, they emerged into a clearing they had never seen. In the center stood a dilapidated cabin, overrun with vines and eerily silent. The fox halted, staring at the cabin before disappearing into the shadows. "Could Jake be there?" David asked, his voice a blend of hope and dread. Approaching the cabin, the old wood creaked under their weight. Inside, it was filled with dust and shadows, but on a dusty table lay a child's red cap, undeniably Jake's. Hazel's knees nearly buckled at the sight. "He was here," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. The cap was a promise, a clue that he was still out there. As they prepared to leave, David's gaze fell on a photograph pinned to the wall. It depicted a group of people, and one man bore an uncanny resemblance to Hazel. "Who are these people?" he wondered aloud. Hazel joined him, her eyes fixated on the man who looked so much like her. "I have no idea," she whispered, a sense of unease creeping in. After leaving the cabin, they marked the location on their GPS, planning to return with the police in the morning. That night, sleep eluded them as they were haunted by the image of the photograph and Jake's red cap. Who was that man? The police searched the cabin and its surroundings but found no new clues, leaving the photograph and the man shrouded in mystery. "We need to understand this place," Hazel said resolutely, seeing the despair in David's eyes. "Let's talk to the older townspeople. Someone must know something about this cabin." Their first stop was Mr. Caldwell, the town historian, who lived in a cluttered home filled with books. Upon seeing the photograph, his eyes narrowed. "Ah, that cabin," he murmured, thumbing through an old ledger. "It's been abandoned for decades, but it used to be." His voice trailed off, as if recalling an untold pain. Hazel and David waited for him to gather his thoughts. "What can you tell us about the cabin?" David urged, his voice tinged with urgency. Mr. Caldwell cleared his throat and pointed to a faded map on the wall. "Let me show you where it stands." As he unrolled the map, he explained that the cabin was once owned by the Harrisons, a pioneering family crucial to Redwood Falls' foundation. They established the first mill and trading post, helping to shape the town's future. He suggested they visit the town archives for further information, directing them to the large building at the end of Main Street. Hazel nodded, jotting down the details in her notebook, determined to leave no stone unturned. As they left, David whispered, "He knows more than he's saying." Hazel agreed, but also felt that the archives might hold the key. With resolve, Hazel and David arrived at the town archives, determined to uncover anything useful. They approached the main desk, their determination palpable in the quiet, dusty room filled with the past. "We need access to all documents related to the founding family," David stated firmly. The clerk nodded and fetched voluminous files. Anticipation grew about what these documents might reveal. They spread the papers across the large table, each piece potentially hiding details of their son's whereabouts. As they sifted through the records, the couple noted any discrepancies or anomalies in family histories. "Look at this," Hazel pointed out. "The dates on these transactions don't line up." They made notes of any inconsistencies that could indicate hidden stories or overlooked details relevant to their search. They highlighted this and other similar entries, piecing together a pattern that might lead to clues. The detailed archival work was slow but necessary, as each file could hold a crucial piece of the puzzle. In a quiet corner of the archives, they started with the founding family's extensive tree. Large, intricate charts spread across the table, tracing generations of Harrisons. David pointed to the various branches, noting significant dates and marriages, while Hazel cross-referenced them with other documents they had gathered. They identified the man from the cabin photo in an old family tree chart. "That's him," Hazel said, pointing at a faded photograph pasted next to a name. The man's features were unmistakable now that they saw him in the context of the Harrison family lineage. "This is incredible," Hazel exclaimed in recognition, which drew David's attention to another intriguing document. "David, look at this," she called out, holding up a brittle letter dated several decades ago. It mentioned the cabin and a gathering, hinting at a secret meeting. David reviewed a different file, finding a potential link to Hazel's ancestors. "This land grant application has your great-grandfather's signature," he said, showing her a document. The name matched, and it was dated around the same time as the earliest Harrison records. This could mean that Hazel's family and the Harrisons were more closely connected than they thought. The documents laid out a network of marriages and business ties between their ancestors and the Harrisons, clearly documenting a shared history that neither had known before. This linkage implied a deeper historical connection between Hazel's lineage and the town's pioneers. They looked at each other in amazement. "Our families helped build this town together," David said, his voice filled with awe. The couple pondered the implications of their families' entwined pasts. Could this connection be why Jake? Maybe there's something about these lands or an old family feud. David speculated as they went through old maps and legal disputes documented years ago. Armed with new knowledge, they decided to revisit the cabin as a potential source of further clues. David nodded, his determination renewed by the day's revelations. Gathering their findings, they set out for the cabin once more. Maps, old photographs, and documents were packed into their backpacks. They planned to explore deeper into the forest, hoping to find more than before. "Last time, we barely scratched the surface," Hazel remarked as they reviewed the map. They marked potential areas of interest with pins, areas that could have been significant to their ancestors and possibly to Jake's disappearance. As they approached the cabin, memories of their first visit mixed with renewed determination. The path, once unfamiliar and foreboding, now seemed like an old challenge. "We're not just following a map, we're following a history," Hazel whispered, pushing aside a branch as they made their way deeper into the heart of the woods. Hazel clutched the photo, comparing it against the fading light, trying to spot the exact angles and landmarks it captured, hoping it would guide them correctly this time. The forest grew darker around them, and they realized they had become lost. "Are you sure this was the right way?" Hazel asked, a note of panic in her voice as she shined her flashlight deeper into the thicket. Hazel expressed her fear, but was suddenly interrupted by a familiar sound. The soft, sharp tapping of a fox, a sound they hadn't heard since their last venture here. They stopped in their tracks, listening intently. The rhythmic tapping seemed deliberate, as if calling them to attention. The fox from earlier reappeared, signaling them to follow it deeper into the woods. With no better plan and the path unclear, David nodded to Hazel, and they decided to trust the creature that had once led them to clues. They hesitated, but the urgency of their situation drove them to follow the fox's guidance. Following the fox led them to a new clearing. After hours of tense navigation, the dense foliage suddenly opened up to reveal a moonlit glade. A stern man emerged from the shadows, weapon drawn, demanding they stop. "Who are you, and what are you doing here?" he barked, his posture tense. Hazel and David froze, hearts racing. Desperately, Hazel showed him a photo of Jake in his cap, pleading, "Please, we're just looking for our son." The man's gaze flicked from the photo to the cap, his expression unreadable. She explained their frantic search, hoping to earn his trust. He revealed himself as a descendant of the founding family of the area. "My ancestors settled these lands," he began, pride resonating in his voice. "Like them, I chose to distance myself from the chaos of modern life." He described how he and his community lived in isolation, adhering to the old ways and remaining connected to the land. As he led them through the dense forest, he revealed that his community had found Jake wandering alone. "He's safe now," he assured them, guiding them toward a small, warmly lit cabin filled with laughter and voices. Overwhelmed with relief, Hazel and David were reunited with Jake, who ran into their arms, joy radiating from his face. "I knew you'd come," he said, muffled against his mother's shoulder. Their reunion marked a new beginning intertwined with the history of Redwood Falls. As they walked back through the woods, David mused, "Our family story is part of this town's lore." They nodded, realizing their journey was not just an end, but the start of a new chapter together.